Hello and welcome to the Untitled Anarchist Seagull channel. I'm your host, an Untitled Anarchist Seagull called Elise. Hello, Adam. So, I had a funny story from the nieces I thought I might start out with. So, it's one for the kids are alright department. So, my two nieces, one almost 10, one just turned 14, are at the dentist's. Just routine stuff, nothing to worry about. And so they're with their dad, who's an absolute sweetheart, and he's off paying the bill, and my younger niece, who is 9, announces that she finds it appalling that people are having to pay for this because healthcare is a human right. And incidentally, did everyone know that actually there are a lot of countries with better healthcare systems than the US? And it's like, yeah. The kids are alright. But on the subject of the right to health care, I became aware of something recently. I had it over-zoomed and it fucks up the formatting. So, when you see rich people having these big in-person events and there's not a mask in sight, here's how that is achieved in many cases. This is a company called EventScan I heard about the other day. Let me just show you. They've got a partial client list, which is interesting, and also just their list of services. So, okay, this is reopening the event industry. Our mission, bringing live events back in a safe and secure environment. So, what do? They have rapid and PCR testing, including customized at-home testing kits, vaccination verification services, full COVID-19 protocol. Yeah, I know, she rocks. She just absolutely rocks. I mean, both of my nieces rock, but the younger one, if anyone, she just manages to just come right out with the shit sometimes, and so, let's see. Pre-event testing data collections, COVID PCR testing collections, thermal scanning services for fever detection, 99% accuracy. They have testing locations all over the world, and essentially what they do is they ensure that every single person who comes into one of these big in-person corporate events or whatever has got a negative PCR test, is verified to have been vaccinated, and that there's contact tracing in case somebody, like with color-coded bracelets and shit, just in case somebody does ping a positive. So here's here are some of the clients of this service that, you know, apparently that we're told that we don't need. You know, we don't need any of these precautions, but rich people insist on taking them and spend considerable amounts of money. So we got U.S. Department of Homeland Security, Red Bull, MasterCard, SpaceX, UPS, Pepsi. Yeah, Samsung, the White House. Like, how much money is the White House spending on having invisible, basically sort of an invisible anti-COVID fortress? Marriott, in Aspo, don't know who the fuck they are, Rolls-Royce, yeah, Abbott, what is that? United States Marshal's Office. So that's 3 federal government offices. WellSky, never heard of them. Also never heard of them. Nielsen IQ, polling people. Roblox. Who else have we got? Oh, okay, now we're back to Homeland Security again. But what's interesting to me here is that when you... See, I decided... I thought it was interesting that I'd never heard of these people when they have this kind of a client list. And I did do some searching, and they are legit. They do, I mean, it isn't a fake website. They wouldn't do a hell of a lot of trouble, including setting up a phone number. Yeah, but I mean, clearly they're not, this isn't something they're setting up, I mean, that Homeland Security is setting up for the concentration camp system. This is for when they're probably whining and dining their big contractors. Shit like that. But, so I decided, it was interesting to me that I had never heard of a service like that, though obviously something like this probably existed. And so I decided to just try an exact phrase search on Google, thank event scan. You know, just because, you know, often people will thank the, you know, the event planning people and other people who make a big, you know, a corporate event or whatever possible. And there was only one hit for the 3 words, the phrase thank event scan, and it was nothing to do with anything. It was in a printer model and a printer manual. But, so I decided to do another search and just search for the name. I did another one just to just check to make sure these people were legit. That this wasn't some kind of a fake website, even though it doesn't really feel like one. And it did look for real. So, if you look, the top results, okay, a lot of these top results are nothing to do with this company. But then the top Google results for a company that includes just basically the who's who of the Fortune 500 of clients, and one of the top results is the Twitter thread where I heard about it in the first place. So it's just very interesting what a low profile is being maintained about the fact that these big, you know, maskless events involving all sorts of, like, corporate fuckers on what's making that possible. So I thought I'd just kind of share that with you. Thought it was interesting. So here we go. We're gonna get into our usual shit. We've got a number of options here, and of course I'm very interested in chat's input on here. We can tell you already did that. Okay, so we've got, this is Keffels. We're responding to Caleb Maupin's response to my react to Caleb Maupin's video. That's gonna be an area of outstanding natural badness. We've got Vush, which we did yesterday, but this is the most based revolutionary, and it's gonna be Vush talking about Africa again, because clearly that's a subject he knows much about. I mean, I guess he found that there were other African countries when he did his Wikipedia search. And then we've got, this is my sort of wild card, none of the usual people. It's Oliver Anthony, the guy, the fucking Nazi gerbil with the horrible song, with Jordan fucking Peterson. So that's another option. Then we've got Warrior Debate. I am Dark Brandon's strongest acolyte. That's Vush again. We've got more Vush. Joe Biden just became the most pro-union president in modern history, which no, he fucking didn't. And there's also Understanding the Complexity of Israel at 75 from PragerU. And A Thing on Love by Caleb Muppet that is alive. Any of that stuff jump out at anyone in chat? We've also got Keffels here with what she calls the weirdest tanky video she's ever seen. That's... And... yes. Well, you mean the Keffels reaction to the reaction to the reaction thing? Yeah, I mean, that could be a clusterfuck or it could be interesting. We'll see.
talk about, like...
Let me just adjust the volume. Let me know how the volume is sounding, chat. Let's get this up. And, okay. Crop looks okay.
I want to talk about, like, getting our country out of the crisis it's in, not having a nuclear war, you know, having jobs and healthcare and education. I don't
Somebody's amplification.
Why is that a fucking crime?
Yeah, I mean, trans people also want healthcare. They want the healthcare.
Like, why exactly? I mean, somebody's turned the amplification way the fuck up, and it's clipping the shit out of his voice.
That is being denied to them by the government that pays your rent. Like, you can see how obviously disingenuous he is.
Like, which, I mean, denied to them by the government that pays your, I mean, she means Russia, but I mean, the thing is, it's weird to be talking about that like it's a Russia thing, when it's very much a US thing, because at this point, the feds are totally complicit, the Democrats are complicit. They could have been using every single bit of the power they have as the party that is in government right now to protect trans people, to protect abortion rights from this onslaught that we're seeing. They have refused to do that. So this is their war on trans people and on abortion rights as much as it is the Republicans.
You can't say you stand with the working class if you think that entire sections of the working class aren't worth fighting for. So, while I was gone, Caleb Maupin responded to me. And now...
Okay, so that'll be interesting. Just going to pause for one little second. I'll be right back. Here we go.
I'm going to respond to Caleb Maupin. Let's see what...
How's the audio?
This is me responding to Keffels responding to me responding to Ben Norton. All right? And if that doesn't break your brain and tell you how worthless this really is, and the fact...
Well, I mean, just... You already break people's brains. I mean, let's be honest here. Not on the level of Sabine Hostenfelder. God, I mean, she managed to come up with a defense of capitalism that fucking PragerU would reject as badly argued. That's what we were watching yesterday. I check it out. I have to say it was somewhat unedifying because there was no structure to any of it. So it was really hard to actually kind of get my teeth into it at all.
The algorithm is rigged to promote that kind of thing. I mean, that right there tells you I'm responding to a response.
It's really funny that he said that, and then the video that he put out about me completely flopped.
To a response. So, there you go, right? There you go. All right, here we go.
Oh, wow. How many, like, could we have a few more here we goes? And maybe he can do that thing where he gets really annoying about... if you want to like, you want to subscribe, maybe push the notification bell for like 10 minutes.
Like, none of this matters to Keffels at all. I'm pointing out that socialists should love the country if we expect...
Like, why? What does that even mean?
To lead the country, we should obviously present that we... love it, and we can make it better with socialism, make it better by breaking out of imperialism. I'm critiquing how the Party of Socialism and Liberation wanted to...
I mean, they're dodgy fuckers too, incidentally, so fuck them.
See, I don't actually disagree with Caleb Maupin here. I think that you should love your country.
Why? Yeah, fuck off. I mean, what does that even mean? What does that even mean? Like, why exactly, why shouldn't we just, like, care about everybody? Why shouldn't that be the thing? Why shouldn't... I mean, there is an argument to be made that when you're, like, a part of a decolonial movement, when you're fighting against the colonization of your culture and cultural genocide and all that shit, that embracing those things there is a revolutionary aspect to embracing those things, to the extent that there's not that they're not like fucking to the extent they're not like fucking reactionary or something like that. But that's not the case here. We're not talking about that. Caleb isn't talking about that. Keffels isn't talking about that. So why aren't we just talking about the working class, which is international? Like, why not care about the fucking world?
However, you should hate the current state of the country.
Yeah, I mean, I've actually heard Nazis make that argument, so that's not great. I mean, in fact, there was a refrain in some fucking German Nazi rock song, Wir lieben dieses Land, wir hassen diesen Staat. We love this country, we hate this state. And it's like, I mean, so that's not exactly... there's a lot of problematic theory that goes with the line that you two are advocating right now.
And you should want to fight to make it a place that you love. I don't think that you have earned being able to love your country unless you're willing to actually fight to make it a good place.
God, the liberalism here is really getting a bit overwhelming.
A place that's actually worthy of respect.
Hail Trump supporters and crack down on dissent more after January 6th. Capital says nothing about that. Like, none of that means anything.
What dissent? Those motherfuckers aren't dissent. And, I mean, when Caleb talks about fucking cracking down, it's always January 6th. It's always the January 6th Nazis. 'Cause he's fash. And he never says shit about Cop City. I mean, the shit that is going down there, the shit that the prosecutors are pulling to just literally, I mean, it's not even... They're not even this isn't even thinly veiled criticism of criminalizing of social movements. It is explicit, outright criminalizing of social movements. It is absolutely fucking terrifying, and it is totally coming to a prosecutor's office near us if this isn't shut down. You know, if this is allowed to succeed in Atlanta. And he never says a word about that. But the fucking January 6th pricks, many of whom were fucking cops, they're doing a react to a react to a react to a... I lost... Hey, Phoenix, how you doing?
Making all these points, and it's like, Capitals is just like, it's like, you know, none of that matters.
So Caleb didn't...
Like, what did he say before this? What's the point, I mean, of doing a react video if you're going to respond to things... And the actual, I mean, I assume his point is going to be bullshit, but I'd like to know what the bullshit point is that's being responded to.
Didn't understand. The point of me doing the initial video was basically just to peep in and take a look at what Caleb was up to. And the reason I didn't have much to say, I assumed most people in the audience knew how much of a bad faith person he is. And I guess I was wrong in that. I think a lot of people were unaware. And I do want to break down exactly how much of a manipulative person he is. And I'm going to address his criticism.
What's his criticism, though?
In full, in this react to a react to a react to a react.
It's because you want the country to burst into flames and everyone to die, right? I mean, it's just like, oh, yeah, why would anyone be patriotic?
Why is he doing a Kermit voice?
He just does this shit randomly.
Why is he becoming the Joker?
Because
He's been becoming the Joker since before the Joker movie even happened. That's just been his fucking character arc.
I'm trying to be entertaining on my stream, Capital.
That's being entertaining. Like, this is really confusing because there are two Keffelses here. And I'm not sure... Okay, so this is the Keffels he's reacting to. And she's reacting... This is really confusing. This is why we shouldn't do time travel.
And that's like the only thing you can say so far. I just made an important point. You have no response.
It wasn't an important point.
But I spoke in a funny voice because it's entertainment. Because I have a YouTube channel. But
See, because it's in the contract, it's in the terms of service. You have to speak in a funny voice if you want to keep your channel.
That's what you're reacting to. That's your critique. Right?
I don't think that that's the reason he did. I think it's because he's trying to fill the air. He didn't have anything to actually say, so instead he mocks his opponents. Something that he
which there's nothing wrong with. I'm mocking both of them.
Criticizes me of doing. See, I didn't say anything in full because I wasn't in a position where I was ready to give a full criticism of everything. But one of the
like, what the fuck happened to fucking proletarian internationalism?
Biggest problems with Caleb Maupin is that
he's an assball.
He's a shill for the Russian government. He pays his bill.
I don't see. Even if he weren't a shill for the Russian government, even if he had no involvement with Russia, the problem would still be he's fash. His whole thing where he, like, sort of pretends to, his whole fake communist shtick that he does, at the same time as he is sucking up to just literal neo-Nazis every chance he gets, that's the problem with him. I don't give a shit. I mean, if he were, I don't care if he were working for CBC or NPR and doing that, it would be just as bad. The fact that it's another country's government and an official enemy government, I do not give a fuck. It does not matter. Like...
by being a talking head for Russia Today. He says, and he will say in this video, that he doesn't care about trans issues. He doesn't want to talk about trans issues. But the reason why is because he is paid for by a government that has made it illegal to have sexual reassignment surgery, has made it...
The thing is that his position on this was already shitty before Russia did those things. I mean, this is a silly... I hate this sort of thing. Because essentially it is depriving the reactionary of any kind of agency. Yeah, he will... Because the thing is, it also misunderstands the role of RT as well, which has, in fact, part of the reason that RT actually used to have somewhat of a better reputation among leftists, and I was actually sort of a rare person to be criticizing it back in the first half of the last decade, is that it was often a network that, because it represented a ruling class with different class interests and different propaganda interests, it would actually platform figures on the left sometimes. And it would actually, cover stories that were getting completely buried in the U.S. Like Standing Rock, like Occupy Wall Street, like a lot of the major protests and uprisings against racist police terror. And see, the thing is, those things all go together. They need to have that sort of thing in there because it legitimizes the fast shit. So I don't think that they would actually care too much if Caleb Maupin took a stand. Yeah, I mean, he had previously claimed to be a supporter of trans rights. He had been on record as pretending to be a supporter of trans rights for quite some time. I mean, when Thought Slime first called him out for having a TERF on, he did a whole thing about how he stood for trans rights, he fought for trans rights and stuff like that. And how he just didn't understand why, that we just didn't know enough to know that talking about transgender ideology was a big old dog whistle and stuff like that, and golly gee. So, I mean, I think taking that sort of approach, taking that approach of just assigning every single one of his shitty views to his employer is already, that's just bullshit. I think it is more accurate to say that if he did not have certain shitty views, and if he did not, particularly on geopolitics, that he would not have gotten the job in the first place.
It's illegal to fly a pride flag in public. He hates trans people, and he hates the working class, which trans people are a part of. The majority of trans people are working class people.
Right?
In fact, disproportionately, trans people are disproportionately working class because there is transphobia.
You want me to speak monotone? This is...
Well, you normally do.
Ben, do you think the Soviet Union was into the transgender thing?
Oh, they were, actually. They were performing gender confirmation surgery in the Soviet Union, starting in, it was like the first documented cases are in the 70s. The East Germany was as well.
Was that what they were focusing on?
What? Wait. What? Wait a second. I think he's drunk.
Yeah, that was a really substantive response. And it's so weird because there isn't anything unusual about the way he's talking here. This is just the way he argues. This is just the way he talks.
I don't drink alcohol. I'm not drunk. Why would you think I'm drunk?
Because she's going for the cheap laugh rather than actually responding. Because that would require a serious picking apart of his ideological positions and a knowledge of just how full of shit he is when he tries to suggest that the entire, Soviet bloc took his exact reactionary positions, as opposed to that just being the position that was adopted in Marxist-Leninist countries during the absolutely most reactionary period of their existence.
This is just dumb.
He's drunk, right? It's interesting to me how he continually says this. He said this for so long. I don't want to talk about trans issues, but he keeps bringing trans issues up over and over again. He obviously wants to talk about trans issues.
Yeah, I mean, it's called dog whistling, and he's trying to appear to be on the he's trying to create some plausible deniability, because he's trying to maintain his entree in at least some kinds of left spaces, or at least among, so naive 20-year-old leftists who have absolutely no experience and don't know who to look out for, which seems to be who he targets for recruitment to his cult.
But he knows that he can't. It's the same reason why he's so afraid to debate me, because he would get rolled. He would have to be open and honest about what he actually believes.
Why would he have to? Well, since when do debates require that? I've seen plenty of debates where nobody was open or honest about anything.
He believes terrible things about trans people, about members of the LGBT community. He's completely okay with legislation that would force us all back in the closet, that would make it illegal for us to access health care. He doesn't want trans people to actually have rights, and he gets mad at trans people for advocating for their own rights. He would rather side with the Russian bourgeoisie.
Why do you have to make this about Russia? There's a big part of the U.S. bourgeoisie that is also very much trying to exterminate trans people. Why do you have to make this a Russia thing? Why is that? What's with this liberal campist reflex? He is very much siding with the U.S. bourgeoisie on this as well, because at the very most, they're not all that bothered about what one segment of the ruling class here is doing.
Than with members of the Russian working class who are trans, who just want to stand up and have the right to be open.
Could we talk about the fact that this is happening in the U.S. too? I mean, please?
And honest about who they are in society, be able to access the health care that every other person deserves.
Seriously? That's what you got? You think I'm drunk? I mean, is it because I'm wearing a white shirt? I think she thinks, in that clip, I'm wearing a white t-shirt, right? And she thinks that I'm Marlon Brando in A Streetcar Named Desire, and I'm just like, Stella! I'm sitting here.
Wow, I mean, he has such up-to-date cultural references.
Hearing my wife beat her, I'm drunk, and it's like, yeah, I'm drunk, and I'm mad at Ben Norton. I'm gonna beat up Ben Norton. I'm a drunk man. I'm an angry drunk man. All right. Well, yeah. Woo.
Go out of pocket.
You think in China they're huge fans of the woke thing, and
what is the woke thing? He never likes to define that.
No, but China recently cracked down on the LGBT community. they have shuttered Beijing's LGBT center, and they have sent terror across the LGBT community in China. These are the things that Caleb defends. These are the things that Caleb believes in, but he knows he can't say publicly because it's detestable, even to his own.
Although, also, there's the fact that prior to that, China had actually been making steps in a pro-LGBT direction. So they at the very least have a contradictory position. It isn't just a straight up, ML equals anti-woke thing.
Audience.
Yeah, because he has to create this false equivalency. Because the whole idea is he tries to sort of position himself. I mean, the people he's trying to woo essentially are MLs. Like naive, inexperienced MLs in particular. And the way he does that is by trying to suggest that everything he's saying is just the normal ML position.
He needs to pretend.
Well, I mean, domestically for her is Canada. She's Canadian. But, I mean, the U.S. is right there, and it is relevant since he's in the fucking U.S. And he has done a video where he laughs at a trans woman, an ML herself, who was talking about how basically she can't go to... she's got a book coming out, and she can't, go to Tennessee and do a reading because it would fall under the remarkably and terrifyingly broad drag ban and potentially subject her to imprisonment. And he thought that was fucking hilarious. And even if we're talking... I don't know, this is just... this is from a week or so ago, so this hadn't happened yet. But Saskatchewan, in Canada, where she's fucking from, is actually having a bit of joining the transphobic with a war on trans people, and they're threatening to use the notwithstanding clause so that they can avoid a legal challenge to their laws that are designed to make trans kids' lives impossible. Or she could be talking about the fact, last I heard she was in Ireland. And what do you know? You have Nazis in Ireland, along with Kelly J. Keane Minshall. I keep on wanting to make her initials KKK, because she's a Nazi. Just had a big old fucking rally in Dublin. And a lot of my friends, a lot of my comrades in Ireland were facing off against that shit. And while the fucking Gardaí were defending it because the Gardaí do love the fascists. But she's not talking about any of that. Instead, she's just making it about Russia and China and shit. And it's this, who is this helping? Who is this fucking helping? Is she taking her fucking debating cues from Xanderhole?
That is not something that he believes, even though it is.
Ben, you live in Nicaragua. Ben, you live in Nicaragua. You do realize that Nicaragua has some of the strictest anti-abortion laws of any country in the world.
See, because if you disagree with any aspect of what a country is doing, you're not allowed to live there. That's not Caleb. That's just the rules of physics.
World. Oh yeah, I don't think you realize that, because even while you're living in Nicaragua, you're tweeting out idiotic things, claiming that anyone who's against abortion is a fact.
I mean, she could also be talking about Britain, which is just across the Irish Sea from her, and where the so-called Equality and Human Rights Commission basically came out with recommendations to just take away all human rights from trans people. And trans people are just absolutely fucking freaking out over this, quite understandably, because this so-called human rights body has decided they aren't human, basically. And she could be talking about that. But, I mean, talking about the U.S. shit would be absolutely just the obvious thing, because he's in the U.S., but acting like this is that this is just a Russian thing is just such bullshit.
Oh my god.
What good does it do?
Moppin rules. This is the most honest he's ever been.
I talk like this all the time.
He does actually talk like this all the time. I don't know where she's getting that he's drunk. It's just nonsense.
And I don't have to be drunk.
Because I remember he turned down. That's really funny. He's saying he doesn't have to be drunk to act this unhinged.
Well, it's true. He, seriously, as somebody who has spent a lot of time listening to Caleb up and talking shite, it's just what he does. It's just how he fucking talks. He's just this full of shit normally. He doesn't need substances for that. It's a natural high. Low.
Maybe I misunderstood. Maybe he's just always this insane.
Yeah, let's be a little bit more ableist, why don't we? Why can't we just say he's full of shit? I mean, just because he says things doesn't mean he believes them.
Almost 2 years ago now, he turned down debating me on trans issues, saying that he does not want to talk about trans issues, and I think this is the only time I've heard him actually speak on trans issues, and it's just...
Oh, well, that's because she's lucky, because she did actually... I mean, if she had looked up, there's a video, one of his streams, and in the title are the words, trans woke hysteria, and if you look for it on his page, you can find it there. And it is, when I did the unofficial Caleb Maupin trailer that I made a few months ago now, that was one of the best edited shorts I've ever made, I think. There was a section that I put a content warning on. I specifically put it because it was just some of the vilest shit ever, because it was really him going mask off. And not just doing this thing where he says he doesn't want to talk about trans issues or whatever.
In relation to the notion that communism is conservative.
It's like my position.
See, why don't you fucking pick apart that aspect of it? Because that's the bullshit. Why do you have to make it some fucking nationalist circle jerk?
Is I don't care about those issues. Like I just explained, and that's the same thing. I just don't.
Imagine being a political pundit for a living and saying, I don't care about these political issues. I don't want to talk about these political issues.
Yeah, because he sucks. Yeah, I mean, and the thing is, and he has realized if he actually talks about these things, he either pisses off the people he wants to be on side with, or the people he needs for plausible deniability. There is literally no way that he can actually take an open position about this that does not actually harm the overall position he's trying to put, where he can sort of sidle up to leftists and pretend that he's some kind of a fucking communist, yeah, without being immediately identified as just fash. He has to avoid... So, I mean, there is a reason he is very careful on this, for the most part.
But he obviously does. He knows what he's doing. He's trying to obfuscate what he actually believes. He's a manipulative, sneaky snake of a person.
I want to have a debate about your genitals. I'm not interested.
Fuck you! I mean, especially, like, talking like this when you've already got a bunch of fucking sex pest allegations against you from the first attempt you made at building a cult that kicked you out because you're such of a creepy Nazi bastard. Maybe don't do that. Jesus, a creepy fuck.
I'm not interested in your genitals. I'm not interested in bathroom.
I'm not interested in your genitals. Not interested in your genitals. I mean, I almost need to clip that. I almost need to I did not need to hear his fucking voice saying, I'm not interested in your genitals. And here's a thing that I saw. I was watching, I kind of, a random thing I noticed. I don't know how, I was watching Prim's Hood Cinema, and it was something to do with, there was a reference to the Fresh Prince, and I realized Caleb Maupin looks like, he's like the whitest possible Carlton Banks, but with, minus the likability.
I'm not interested in women's sports. I'm not interested in
I gotta say, distilling the totality of trans issues down to genitals is more transphobic to me than the people who call me a tranny. The people...
Yeah, I mean, that is actually really mask off, but it's also an evasion. Because he wants to try to make it sound like actually talking about the situation of trans people, say, in the U.S., is talking about some random trans person's genitals or some shit. He wants to do it that way because it allows him to get out of the conversation, but it also allows him to get out of the away from the subject without having to really say anything explicit about where he actually stands. He strongly implies where he stands by making it like that. But
people who tell me to kill myself because I'm trans, because at least they're honest in what they believe. But this kind of dismissal that you see from Caleb is gross, because you know he's actually hiding his true beliefs with this by trying to hand wave it away.
Stuff. I want to talk about, like,
it is gross. He is gross.
It's in not having a nuclear war, you know, having jobs and healthcare and education. I don't want to talk about your genitals.
Like, what about trans people having jobs and healthcare and education, though? Because all of those things are currently under fucking attack, my dude.
Why is that a fucking crime?
Yeah, I mean, trans people also want healthcare. They want the healthcare that is being denied to them by the government that pays your rent.
Like, again, this is literally being denied by the U.S. government right now. Why do you have to make it about Russia? Why can't we talk about the government of the country he is living in? The country that he bears, like we all do who live here, some responsibility for what it does, because it happens because they depend on our acquiescence to do it. Why don't we talk about that? Because trans people, I mean, when you have these fucking bathroom laws, what that's basically saying, that's banning trans people from public space. You ban trans people from public space, that's education, healthcare, and work. That's the trifecta. That's all of those things are being taken away. All based on some fucking public toilet bullshit. But then you also have laws very specifically banning access to healthcare, and they're getting worse every fucking day. And courts are letting them through in a lot of places, and the Supreme Court, I don't think anyone can realistically feel that the Supreme Court is any kind of bulwark against this shit. They have made it very clear that it's open season. Then they're a bunch of fucking reactionary ghouls. So, I mean, why aren't we talking about that? Why do you have to make... It's like, yeah, you've made the point. He gets paid by RT. Everybody fucking knows that. He doesn't hide it. He posts his RT videos on there. Why don't we talk about the fact that this is solidarity, that this is something that he could be, I mean, theoretically, if he were a totally different person, could be a voice speaking out against something that is going on right now in this fucking country. The country that he's in. The country he pays taxes to, one imagines. The country he, says he wants to, that talks about loving and all this other bullshit. Like, why not talk about that? Because the thing is, if you make it about Russia, there isn't a whole lot that anyone over here can do about what's going on in Russia, or China, or any other, official enemy state. Our opinions do not matter. What matters there, the people who are in a position to act on those things, are the people who are living there, because those are the people whose acquiescence those governments depend on. But on the other hand, talking about what's going on here could have actual consequences, could actually help to build some sort of consciousness of the importance of resisting. I'm saying in a hypothetical alternate timeline where he's a totally different kind of person. But, making this all about Russia, it's just,
But you can see how obviously disingenuous he is. You can't say you stand with the working class if you think that entire sections of the working class aren't worth fighting for.
I don't want to talk about your genitals, right? I don't want you to be bullied. I don't want you to be persecuted. I want people to have access.
You thought it was really funny for trans people to be persecuted a few weeks ago, Caleb.
To the support that they need. I want people's families to...
Oh, fuck off. Holy shit. Like, what a fucking snake. Hold on a second. Let's do some reading real quick.
Again, Jesus Christ, can we do some reading about what's going on in the U.S., the country he's literally in, where he is actually very directly complicit at this point in creating the idea that, you know, amongst your more naive and inexperienced left-leaning people, who are the kind of people he targets, that it is a totally respectable thing to just not give a shit about trans rights, to pretend that that's somehow separate from the working class struggle, at a time when trans people's rights are massively under attack. Can we talk about that, please? Why do you have to make everything about Russia? Why does it...
Let's talk about the Russian gay propaganda law. The Russian federal law for the purpose of protecting children from information advocating a denial of traditional family values. A bill that was unanimously passed by the State Duma back in 2013. So the stated purpose for this law is to protect...
fun fact. There's a gay propaganda law actually making the way through Congress, and it has bipartisan endorsement, except it's called the Kids Online Safety Act. But what it does is that it gives every fucking state governor in the country, no matter what kind of piece of shit they are, the power to just sort of block entire areas of the internet on any kind of subject that they think, you know, kids, because it's always about the kids, shouldn't have access to. And actually, there are all sorts of provisions in there that essentially make it impossible for any internet service provider, any hosting provider, to host things like LGBT content without putting themselves at risk of fines and prosecution and lawsuits and things like that under this law. And Joe Biden has endorsed it. He says that the Congress should pass it without delay. Lots of Democrats, as a result, also support it. And that is the gay propaganda law right there. And it's going on in the US, and there is still time to raise awareness that this fucking thing is going on and try to stop it. And you're talking about this bullshit. Like, everybody, like, this is really kind of irrelevant.
Children from being exposed to homosexuality, condemn presenting homosexuality as being a norm in society under the argument that it contradicts traditional family values. I thought that Caleb just said that he's against persecution. This is an incredible example of the persecution.
See, this lets him off the hook, because he can always say, and he would not be wrong, that if he raises his voice on this, it does not actually help anyone in Russia. And in fact, it just sounds like U.S. imperialist propaganda, and can be dismissed as such in Russia. But he can't say that about the shit that's going on in the U.S. at the state and federal level to just basically make it illegal for trans people to exist. He could not actually give that defense for not speaking out against that shit. In fact, he would also be painted into even more of a corner, because you could show a clip of him thinking it's funny that trans people are afraid of what this stuff means for this is she's just totally letting him off the hook here.
Of the LGBT community by the state. Businesses and organizations can also be forced to temporarily cease operations if convicted under the law. Foreigners may be arrested and detained for up to 15 days, then deported, or fined up to 5,000 rubles and deported. So let's go over the contents of this.
Could we please just go over the contents of what's going on with LGBT people in the U.S.? Because that's the country he's in, see?
This is very important in order to understand how much of a snake he is. Article 1 of the bill.
No, it really isn't. It isn't. This totally lets him off the hook.
it, with a provision classifying propaganda of non-traditional sexual relationships as a class of materials that must not be distributed among minors. The term is defined as materials that are aimed at causing minors to form non-traditional sexual predispositions, notions of attractiveness, or non-traditional sexual relationships, distorted ideas about the equal social value of traditional and non-traditional sexual relationships, or imposing information about non-traditional sexual relationships, which raises interest in such relationships insofar as these acts do not amount to a criminal offense.
I mean, oh god, I mean, yes, it's terrible. And it's gotten worse, actually. But could we please talk about the thing that's going on that we have some kind of potential to do something about, and that Caleb cannot easily weasel out of because he can't say that there's anything to do with anti-imperialism.
So how can he say, I am against the LGBT community being bullied, when there are literally laws in place stating that you cannot say that straight and gay relationships are not equal?
Well, probably the way he could say that, since you've decided to go with this actually shitty example that lets him off the hook, is that he's saying he can work for an employer without necessarily agreeing with everything that employer does. He could say that. That would be the easy way. He could say he's never spoken out in favor of it, and in a very narrow sense, that's true. He has never literally spoken out in favor of this particular law. He can say that, and so he can say that this is just not that. So there are ways he can weasel out, is what I mean, that do not work as well when you're talking about stuff that's going on in the U.S.
You're literally setting up a legislative basis for the systematic discrimination.
I didn't know that Caleb was an MP in Russia, actually. I didn't realize he was setting up that legislative basis. That he was just sort of carrying water for them on television.
Against the entirety of the LGBT community. And this is what Caleb Maupin believes. This is what he advocates for. These are the kinds of things that he cannot say on his channel.
What is it with these fucking debate people? Why is it that every single one of these people whose entire thing is that they're supposedly the debate people, they're good at the debate thing, and every single one of them sucks at dealing with Caleb Muppet? Like, literally, this is giving... I mean, it was the same thing with Vush as well. Ian managed to make Caleb Muppet come off as a comparatively literate and well-informed person compared to him. And she's doing it here too. She's just completely giving him an out.
Because he knows that this is abhorrent. Even to his own audience. He has to tiptoe around this stuff. So here's a good example.
Well, it depends. His audience includes people who celebrate this. That's why he has to tiptoe around it. If his audience was entirely made up of people who felt one way or the other, I mean, or felt the same way as he does, he wouldn't have to tiptoe around it. If his audience was made up entirely of people who disagree with him, he might have to. But his problem is, he's got an audience, he's trying to appeal to two groups of people. The outright just fascist reactionary assholes who you don't have to tiptoe around with this stuff because they absolutely love it. And naive, ignorant, inexperienced young leftists who will fall prey to his cult.
Because he said he was against bullying. The legislation reportedly led to an increase in violence against LGBT people in Russia. Russian LGBT network chairman Igor Kotachev argued that the law has essentially legalized violence against LGBT people because these groups of hooligans justify their actions with these laws, supported by their belief that gays and lesbians are not valued as a social group by the federal government. Reports surfaced of activity by groups such as Occupy Pedophilia and Parents of Russia who lured alleged pedophiles into dates.
Wow, this almost sounds like the way right-wingers have decided to declare all LGBT people groomers in the U.S. Why are you letting him off the hook? Why are we talking? I mean, this isn't even news. This is like from years ago. Like, look, we haven't even made it to January 2004. I held a placard against this law when it was new,
where they were tortured and humiliated. In August 2013, it was reported that a gay teenager was kidnapped, tortured, and killed by a group of Russian neo-Nazis. Violence was also increased during pro-gay demonstrations. On the 29th of July 2013, a gay pride demonstration at St. Petersburg's Field of Mars resulted in a violent crash.
It's worth noting, since this doesn't get mentioned a lot, but actually, this is one of the things that Russia and Ukraine have in common, because Nazis and the cops attacking pride parades and pro-LGBT demonstrations, that's kind of a normal feature of life in Ukraine. So that's one of those things that they agree on.
Between activist protesters and the police. Let's take a look. The effects on the level of hate crime against LGBTQ people.
Could you please do the U.S., the country he's in? Are you ever going to get around to it?
Number of research projects and NGOs reported that the introduction of the gay propaganda law affected the level of hate crimes against LGBTQ people in Russia. 3 organizations published data on LGBTQ hate crime, and that was the 2 Russian NGOs, LGBT initiative group Stimuli, and Sova Center, which I'm sure that Caleb would call a CIA-funded op or something. And 1 international organization, OSCE, Office for Democratic Institutions Human Rights, their combined statistics show an increased level of such incidents after 2013. Even one of...
Yeah, and incidentally, again, the fact that he could make that sort of use that sort of excuse with any kind of like NGOs or something like that, whether it's true or not, is another reason it would be good to be talking about the stuff that is going on in his backyard.
One of the most beloved members of this community is a refugee, a queer refugee from Russia who was forced to flee the country out of fear for her own life. And this is what Caleb Maupin believes in. This is what Caleb Maupin defends. He is
the thing is, he has never, see, as she pointed out, he tiptoes around it. He has never actually defended this. Maybe she will, maybe I will have to eat some of my words, and because she will actually have lured him into defending this stuff. And that would actually be one beneficial thing to come from this nonsense, because then he would have taken a very clear position that would clearly put him just utterly beyond the pale, but in a way that was just undeniable. But he, as she herself points out, he is tiptoeing around this. He may believe that this is a good thing. I happen to think that he probably is okay with it. With a law like this, I happen to think that he probably is okay with the fucking things that are going on in the U.S. right now as well. But you can't really say he defends it, because he's way too slick with his shit for that. He avoids defending it. He will share a platform with people who celebrate it, and he will kind of nod along, but he always maintains that deniability. That's part of the Caleb Maupin strategy.
A fucking disgusting human being.
Yeah, he's a piece of shit.
He is basically just a fascist. Him calling himself a communist is a joke.
Oh, it is actually, and he is. He's a Nazbol. Welcome to the state of human knowledge on Caleb Muppet, circa 2019.
To treat them right, but I don't want to talk about your genitals. And that's do you see how long this clip played where I'm making points about patriotic socialism, and I'm making...
I didn't hear him making any points.
Absolutely nothing about that. But the second I say, Ben Norton doesn't seem to realize that what the woke people in the West that are obsessed with the trans issue...
Yeah, because nobody outside of the West gives a shit about trans people. Let's fuck this bullshit.
And what communism in China is are not the same thing. She's like, oh...
No, he isn't a patriot.
Yes, he is. That's the problem. Being a patriot to the U.S. is not a good thing.
Hates the American people. He hates the working class.
Yeah, those are prerequisites for being a patriot in the U.S. That's why it's not a good thing. God, she's attacking him from the right now. He's not nationalist enough. It's like, Shut up.
He's not a communist by any stretch of the imagination.
Oh, he's bringing up genitals. See, she said, why won't he actually say something about trans rights? It's, because it's actually kind of an issue. And he says, I don't want to, and she'd wanted to debate him on the subject of trans rights. And his response, it's an evasion and a really just creepy, fucked up, misogynistic evasion as well, is to make that, like, she wants to talk about her genitals as opposed to just talking about trans rights. So that's what he's doing there. And it is creepy as fuck.
We're either all in this together or we will fall apart. The fact that he is completely okay with the subjugation of marginalized groups shows me that he doesn't care. There are people in Vietnam, in North Korea, in Cuba.
Actually, Vietnam does pretty well on LGBT rights. And there are undoubtedly queer people in the DPRK, but that's about as much as one can say about it because there's just very little information on the subject. And actually, the North Korean government basically never even talks about the subject.
In China, in Russia, in all of the countries that he gets a fucking boner for that are struggling every single day in order...
Actually, I mean, the thing is, God, she's managing to get that point wrong again. Because the thing is, she's actually taking as read the bullshit that he uses in order to try to position himself as just a plain simple ML. Just another ML. And when the reality is actually the countries that he lists have actually quite varied positions on the woke, whatever. Like, I mean, Vietnam actually, for Southeast Asia, has a pretty good record on LGBT rights. Cuba has a better record on LGBT rights at this point than the U.S., actually. So she's just kind of taking what he's saying as read, but the thing is that what he's saying is bullshit. Because what he's trying to do is equate... he's trying to equate communism and fascism, and the way he does that is by taking the most reactionary period and the most reactionary tendencies within ML countries as just the baseline of what the whole thing stands for, without looking at how it is actually developed.
To have their basic rights acknowledged by the government, and he doesn't care.
My God! Oh my God! It's like, and then she thinks I'm drunk. Like, what if I?
Yeah, I mean that is silly.
I was completely sloshed. Why does that matter? Like, this is so dumb and childish.
God, I really hate this. I mean, this is a situation where, like, two people who really kind of suck occasionally are going to have, by default, a valid point. And what he just said, yeah, I mean, this is a ridiculous... I mean, there's so many ways to tear what he's saying apart, and she manages to find none of them.
Like, this is who we're dealing with. Fascist and a theocrat and stuff.
Well, I mean, you are. At the very least, you spend an inordinate amount of time in the close and cordial company of fascist garbage fuckers. I mean, there's the speech he gave to a bunch of French and Russian fascists in Moscow a few years ago, and that's right up in your fucking YouTube channel. Then you did a whole thing where you were defending your participation in the white rage against the fucking... against the war machine demonstration, which had people who were directly involved in the Charlottesville pogrom on the podium.
Then, if you've ever been to any communist country in the world, Vietnam, Cuba, North Korea, China, Laos, Venezuela, you would know that according to the woke idiots you hang around with, if anyone says anything remotely close to what those people think, they would be labeled a conservative.
No, actually. I mean, the countries he just listed have very different positions on the things that he refers to as the woke. I mean, like, Cuba is actually, at this point, by the standards we're talking about, woke as fuck. I mean, they've been participating for over a decade in the International Days Against Homophobia and Transphobia. And they just actually, by a substantial majority, passed a whole new families code to remove the cis-het nuclear family as the default and only legally recognized model of the family. I mean, the DPRK, it's hard to tell exactly what the situation is. There are indications that it's not good. I mean, the only actual statement of position, or the closest thing I've found to an actual statement of position on LGBT issues at all, is I decided to look up in their official dictionary of the Korean language, the Chosunmal De Sajon, would look up homosexuality, 동성애, in it, and it was just a totally homophobic definition. It referred to it as a perverted form of love from the former way of life, which, I mean, does kind of suggest that they're pretty fucking homophobic. But, I mean, the Soviet Union actually, they started out by decriminalizing homosexuality, for fuck's sake. The most reactionary period, which is the only one that he actually really stands, is the one where they recriminalized it, and they criminalized abortion.
So please, do not try to...
This is such a bad argument on his part. It's a disingenuous and lazy argument. The fact that he invoked Cuba, too. Cuba, the country that
actually, Vietnam and the... Okay, now I'm responding to Keffels' chat, that's stuff.
As sexual reassignment surgery funded by the government, the country that has same-sex marriage on a federal level is something he wants to say, oh, the people in Cuba, they're too conservative for that woke nonsense.
Oh, okay, she is actually going to address this. It seemed like she wasn't, because she was too busy, like, talking about Russia.
Guess what? Do you know who was against same-sex marriage in Cuba? It was the Catholic Church. It wasn't the Communist Party. Miguel Diaz-Canel, the president of Cuba, wanted to push it forward, and the only reason it didn't go forward years ago was because of mass protests by the Catholic Church.
Yeah, I mean, she's right about this. She's totally right, and if she had done her homework anywhere near as well on the other stuff, then... yeah. Then this would almost be worth a response worth watching.
It had nothing to do...
I mean, and if you read Alexandra Kollontai, who I've been translating, and what she says about, you know, the traditional family and all this sort of stuff, I mean, she has a whole chapter on it. It is the second longest chapter in her book. I'm going to just link, because I just finished translating this about a week and a half ago. So I'm just going to pop that link there for anyone who wants to read the draft translation in PDF format. Here we go. But, I mean, and the whole point she makes is that actually as the productive forces change, as the way that we produce things changes, the way that the family works also changes. And that this is just sort of a natural result of, because the family used to be much more of an economic unit, and the more the society, you know, the more production is socialized, the more the family does not have to be that.
With the communists, nothing to do with them.
Convince me that the Chinese Communist Party is woke, that the Vietnamese Communist Party is woke, that Nicaragua...
Well, the Vietnamese Communist Party is pretty woke, though.
...is woke. They're socialists. They're anti-imperialists. They're not woke. I actually care about them. I'm not just putting on some woke autistic grift like you. I love...
What the fuck?
Now, first of all, I want you to see that. Now, this is something that the BreadTube crowd does a lot. And this is, I mean, this is one of their...
I love that I became the BreadTube crowd at some point, even though most people on BreadTube hate me. I don't know when that happened, but yeah, the phrase woke autistic grift is fucking hilarious. It doesn't mean anything.
It's just ableism, which usually she likes.
And he isn't going to elaborate on it. He's just going to use me laughing at him being a dumbass as some sort of gotcha.
Normal techniques. They don't say anything. Right? Everything I said there.
Well, I kind of want to know what came before this. That was the middle of a sentence this started on.
Everything I said there in that rant that was like epic, where I was just killing it and talking about how I'm trying to build a real movement and I actually care about working people, everything I said was true.
No, I mean, if that's what it was about, then it sounds like nothing you said was true, because you're not trying to build a real movement, and you clearly don't give a fuck about the working class.
She has no rebuttal to any of it.
He's not trying to build a real movement. He built like a sex cult.
No, the thing is, I mean... It's somehow funnier to say that it's a sex cult, but the reality is it was just a regular ass cult that he was also using to get his rocks off. And they kicked him out, which is why he set up a second one with the same name.
Not a real movement, where he literally abused the members of his sex cult, starved them, made them trauma bonded to him. He's an insane human being.
But she plays it, and then she stops it, and she goes, and does this woke laugh, this forced laugh, and does this woke laugh.
What's a woke laugh?
Do you like my woke laugh, chat?
I thought that was a Woody Woodpecker laugh. Are we saying Woody Woodpecker is woke now? I mean, I just want to understand. Is the official Chud position now that Woody Woodpecker is woke?
I do it all the time.
That is one of the most common techniques. Surfs does this, Vosh does this, right? And basically, they're trying to train their audience. It's a psychological technique.
Oh, yeah, he's going to talk about manipulation. That's because he knows so much about it, because according to former members of the first of his cults, he spends a lot of time reading up on how cult leaders manipulate their members.
They're trying to train their audience that anyone who pretends to care about working people, just laugh at them.
Well, yeah, I mean, why shouldn't we? Anyone who pretends to care. Wait, did he just describe himself as somebody who pretends to care about working people by accident? Like, did he just do a little Freudian?
That's basically what they're saying. If anyone comes in, and says they care about hungry children in the Bronx, just laugh at them. If anyone says they...
Yeah, I mean, we all know from, like, the Surfs' reaction videos, we all know from Thought Slime's reaction videos, it's just people say they care about, like, starving children in the Bronx, and then they just laugh hysterically. That's totally how that works.
Stop World War III, just laugh at them. And they're just trying... It's like the laugh...
He doesn't care about working people.
Yeah, I mean, notice he actually said... I mean, let me just pull this back.
They're trying to train their audience that anyone who pretends to care about working people...
Anyone who pretends to care about working people. He just showed his whole ass
like socialism shit is nonsense. It's nonsense, revisionist bullshit. The workers of the world have no country.
Thank you for remembering that. I mean, because you just were going off on this whole bullshit about patriotism like 5 or 10 minutes ago, and
national boundaries that divide us are meaningless. The only way that
then how do you square that with this bullshit about loving your country? Fuck off.
Socialism can ever be achieved on this earth is if it's achieved on a global scale. It's all for one or one for nothing. I probably did.
All for one or one for nothing? God kväll, KKM. Det är en nasbål.
Did that last thing right, but absolutely fuck this guy.
Nationalbolshevik.
On a sitcom. right? You know, they play the laugh track on the sitcom after the joke to like get you to think it's funny, to get you to not think about it. That's what it is. It's a manipulation. She wants anyone, she was trying her best to get all the people who watch her, that the next time anyone comes to them and says, hey, I've got a petition to stop World War III, they go,
yeah. I'm sorry. If someone knocked on my door, it was like, "Hey, will you help?" Hey,
I mean, if somebody thought a petition was going to stop World War III, I would have trouble not laughing, because I'm old enough to remember when millions of people in the streets of major national capitals in the Imperial Corps didn't stop a war that has murdered millions of people. Like, but a petition will totally do it. Yeah, I would actually have trouble not laughing there.
If you sign my petition to stop World War III, I would laugh. Like, what the hell kind of example is that? That's the most liberal garbage I've ever heard.
It's too liberal even for Keffels.
you're a weirdo. They don't even know why it's funny.
Yeah, so that is. How do you call yourself any sort of leftist and then think, oh yeah, petitions, that's gonna help? I'm sure if I present this petition with a bunch of signatures to fucking Vladimir Putin, he's gonna be like, all right, we're pulling out of Ukraine. It looks like this petition has got enough signatures. Obviously, this is a bad call for us. We didn't know people didn't like this war before we were handed this petition. I'm so glad that Caleb Maupin made this.
Like, literally, there's a petition to get Cop City on the ballot in Atlanta, and the Democrats who run Atlanta are trying to prevent it going to a vote, even though they have over 100,000 signatures. They're refusing to do the signature verification for it.
This change.org petition and emailed it to Vladimir Putin at russia.gov.
It's like a laugh track on a sitcom. And Surfs does this, Vosh does this, they all do this, right? She didn't have a single argument against anything I said. Nothing. Right? And she watched me go off an epic rant that got me a huge amount of likes.
Wow, it got him a lot of likes. That must mean that it's good, that it's a good take. I mean, if there's one thing that is a real good barometer for whether something is a good take, it's whether it gets a lot of likes on YouTube.
Many people in the chat were loving it. And then
oh, well, I mean, if people in your chat loved it, then it had to be good.
She just follows it up, she pauses it, and her only response is a forced laugh. Like, she doesn't think it's funny, right? It's a forced laugh trying to train her audience.
He's trying to train her audience. He's just letting it all hang out here.
It's so funny that he thinks that that is the part. I'm like specifically laughing at him being a dumbass for the purpose of like mind washing my chat into thinking him being a retard is funny.
Okay, what fucking hell?
To basically dismiss.
Let's see if her chat calls her out on that fucked up shit she just said.
Anyone who cares about working families, anyone who tries to stop war. And it's very
nobody.
Nasty. I think it comes from like a manual or something, because they all do it.
Nobody in her chat is calling her out for the fucking ableism.
It's very weird. It's very, very weird. But
Shit, chat, did you notice that all these live streamers like to laugh at people being stupid? That's crazy. I didn't know that. What the fuck? This is a conspiracy.
Basically, they don't want anybody to feel empathy for people that are facing economic hardship. They don't want anyone to stop the wars. And so they play...
Yeah, Mr. Empathy here. I mean, he laughed his ass off at Melinda Butterfield's article where she said how she is kind of terrified about the situation in the U.S. because there are laws that in the books that basically make it a crime for her to exist in public as a trans woman. And he thought that was fucking hilarious, Mr. Empathy here.
Videos of people saying completely sensible things, and they stop and then they laugh, and it's not an argument at all.
Maybe it's because you're not actually saying very many sensible things.
And it's
the only reason he is able to film this video in the room that he is in is because he is bought and paid for. Actually,
she's gonna say Russia again. Actually, he's living off his wife for the most part.
by the Russian government, the same government that is terrorizing the queer community, making LGBT people have to flee their homes and their country in search of a better life. He doesn't care.
Actually, I mean, he kind of lost most of that paycheck after there were some rules about the fucking RC having to register and a bunch of other shit, and it made their operations more difficult. He is, from what I have heard, coasting off of the income generated by his wife, who busts her ass while he's doing this bullshit.
About people facing hardships. He's okay with it, as long as he can get his bread at the end of the day. It doesn't matter how many people have to be destitute, thrown under the...
You see, the thing is, if this were just about the money, there are so many better and more lucrative grifts. In fact, if he were to just go over and just be fash, he would actually probably make more money. Get into the Tim Pool cinematic universe. Get on there with, like, fucking Jordan Peterson or one of those motherfuckers. He would be making fucking epic amounts of money. He specifically has etched out a specific position for himself, which actually limits his income, even though ideologically it would not be much of a step at all for him. It would not be a major shift at all for him to just go over to, like, fucking the outright, openly far-right online communities and join there. So I don't think this is about the money. I think he is just actually sincerely a Nazbol, which is just a shitty thing to be.
The bus. How many people have to be...
I mean, if it were the money, you know how much money somebody could probably make as an ex-RT staffer writing some kind of bullshit, like tell-all autobiography about their time working for RT or something like that? Major publishers would eat that shit up. Nobody would even bother to fact check it, which is good because, I mean, fact checkers would have a really hard time dealing with Caleb Maupin because he doesn't really do facts for the most part. If this were just about the money, there are so many more lucrative things he could be doing. He has specifically chosen something that is less lucrative, so I really think if we're going, it's just a silly thing to attack him for. Because he very clearly is not doing the most lucrative version of the grift that he's doing.
Killed, even, as long as he gets his paycheck.
It's obviously quite scary. Shit. I love my country, and that's why I'm a socialist. I want to see an America where everyone has jobs and healthcare and education. I want to see an America where the bankers are defeated.
I just want to see communism, actually.
And you want to hustle money and grift and rip off the anti-imperialist countries.
He's obviously very salty about the fact that he got fired from Russia Today.
I've never been...
Wait, okay. So, what, did he get fired and rehired? Because if he got fired from Russia Today, then why... Wait, okay, this is now very confusing, because she's talking about Russia Today money in the present tense, but this video, the Keffel's in the middle of the screen, my understanding is, she's part of the video from several days before, and so what the fuck? Like... Did he get fired and rehired? Was she wrong about him being fired? Like, it seems like she's directly contradicting herself here, and it's the sort of thing, especially since she's clearly aware that she's directly contradicting herself, because she's watching herself say this thing that is the exact opposite of what she just said about, went on a very long rant about how he is currently getting a paycheck from RT and everything like that, and if that's not true, then, I mean... Yeah, if one of the two things she said, they can't both be true. One of them has to be false. So wouldn't it be a good moment to just show some honesty towards your... and just give your audience some credit and say, wow, it seems like I actually got that one wrong. Whether it's about him getting fired, or whether it's about him currently being employed by them. It's just so fucking... I mean, that is just... See, this is another reason... God. Yeah, I mean, he definitely... Well, no, see, he had to give CPI Mark 1 up because they literally kicked him out. He had to found a whole new cult. He had to reincorporate it in Oregon because because the cult that was incorporated in New York where he lives kicked him out. This is a whole new thing that he started just under the same name.
Fired from Russia today. When did that ever happen? If you go to my Twitter right now, the pinned tweet...
Damn, I can't believe Caleb Maupin just let us know he was fired from Russia today.
On my Twitter is my report that I did on RT a few days ago.
He just said, how could she possibly think I was fired from Russia today? And her response is, I can't believe that he just announced he got fired from Russia today. Like, it sounds like she was wrong at least once.
I work for RT every single day. When have I ever gotten fired from RT? That never happened. I work for RT. I've worked for RT for the past...
So she was wrong. I mean, I would assume he wouldn't be lying about this. It would be a strange thing for him to lie about. So she was wrong then.
8 years of my life, nonstop. That never happened. Right? I've certain many people claim this on BreadTube that I've been fired from RT. I have never been fired from RT. I am.
He's talking about it like it's something to brag about. This guy is a...
well, why didn't you talk about the fact that you got it wrong, though? Why didn't you just take a moment? Like, I got it wrong on him once as well. I had actually believed... Yeah, I mean, somebody had said just for the memes that his father was some kind of a banker. And I believed that. I assumed... because it was sort of repeated in a way that sounded like... they also had reason to believe it by, like, Thought Slime and the Surfs at one point. I took it as read that it was the case, and I did a video. And Caleb Maupin himself put me on blast, called me a liar for saying that his father was a banker. I looked it up. I checked out his father in detail, found him. Yeah, which isn't entirely easy, but it's not that hard, because his father is actually, like, fairly well documented online. And found he's definitely not a banker, was never in the financial services sector at all. And so I issued a fucking correction. Because that's what you do when you get these things wrong. But I will just leave that there because it is time for me to wrap up. And let me just thank everyone for joining. I hope you enjoyed the stream as much as I enjoyed making it. And if you did, please consider supporting me on my Patreon. You can find the link by... I posted the link a minute ago. Or you can use the Patreon command. Let me also just give you the link to my Discord for anyone who hasn't already joined. That's where you can keep in touch with me in between streams. And where I love to hear suggestions for videos to be looking at and stuff like that. I am continuing to work on the extremely long media literacy video essay, and I've also got a podcast I'm sort of working on that is going to be in Spanish, and it is looking at the historical archive of the Punto Final magazine in Chile, and what they were talking about in real time as the coup was being plotted and unfolding during the Allende years. Because a lot more was known and openly discussed in Chile at the time about what was going on and about U.S. involvement than most people, I think, realize. And so that's the thing I'm also working on right now. I will see you next week, and I look forward to it. Have a very good rest of your weekend.